The smaller cube gets the bigger box. The WeiLong GTS3 can be bought at $50 from CubeWorks. The cube measures 55.5 millimeters across without the ridges, and with the ridges, it measures 56.2. The general feel and handling of this cube is similar to the AoSu GTS. Both cubes are very smooth and very stable, and you can feel quite a snap when you corner cut large angles on them. It's kind of reminiscent of the Yexiao. The turning is also much silkier than what I'll get in most other cubes. However, the WeiLong GTS3 does not deserve the name of AoLong GTS because the mechanism is different from anything with the word Ao in its name. The GTS3 magnets are about as strong as the inner layers of the AoSu GTS. And personally, I'm not a fan of that because I have quite a light turning style and I prefer weak magnets. So this is my main cube, the MF3RS2, and it almost feels non-magnetic. The magnets just help to hold the pieces together and keep the cube tighter. But I don't really want the magnets becoming super invasive and producing a very strong snap. But if you have a more aggressive turning style, you may actually like this because it means that you're less likely to flex the cube around when you're turning very fast. The strong snap also makes the turning more accurate. So it's really a personal preference issue when it comes to magnets. The GTS3 has very strong corner cutting, but that's nothing special at all. Practically every decent 3x3, like of modern standards, can corner cut the same. And there's even a 2016 budget cube, as well as a 4x4 cube. They can corner cut just as much. And up to this point, the GTS3 just seems like the typical good cube. Smooth, fast, the same good corner cutting as anything else. It's stable. And the only bad thing I can say about it is the strong magnets, which is purely my personal preference, and it might be a good thing for you if you like strong magnets. However, the GTS3 also introduces quite a number of innovations, and the two biggest ones are the ridges and the spring compression. The ridges on the GTS3 actually give a much better grip compared to a flat cube. But I feel that this improved grip is most of the time a useless advantage because just like corner cutting, you only need to cut like one piece. You don't really need to go all the way up to 45 unless you want to show off, or in that self you just happen to screw up and misalign the layers so much and you need some corner cutting to like save you. It's kind of the same with the ridges. If you just happen to miss on what would have been a flat cube, then like maybe the ridges can like reduce the chance of that happening. But it's really just that one time off instance. Aside from the ridges, the other new innovation that the GTS3 introduces is the spring compression system. And according to MoYu, it says it allows more choice in elasticity. I'm going to talk about the spring force equation. F is equal to Kx. F is just the force that the spring exerts. K is a constant that is controlled by the hardness of a spring. So if your spring is harder, K will have a bigger value. But here we do not change the spring at all, it's always the same spring. So K will have a constant value and it's irrelevant for this discussion. And lastly, X is the compression of the spring. Compression is basically how much you squash the spring compared to its original length. So let's say if you have a 10mm long spring and you compress it down to 6mm, then the compression will be 4mm. So in an ordinary cube, you can only control the tensions from the top by adjusting the screw. The bottom height here is constant, and then you can actually push it down by tightening the cube. So you are only adjusting the compression from the top and the bottom is just fixed. But on the GTS3 however, you have a new piece that comes into the picture, which is this blue plastic called the spring compression system, or at least that's what I call it. So it actually fits at the bottom here. And now it's movable. So you can compress the spring from the top as well as from the bottom. You can now control the height of the center from the core, which in turn affects the elasticity. So I'm going to prove this by doing an experiment. And to keep my experiment as fair as possible, I'm going to keep the spring force constant and alter only the elasticity. So this means whenever I push the spring compression system upwards, I will also push the spring upwards by the same amount so that the length of the spring is the same and the compression of the spring will be the same. This is what the GTS3 looks like at minimum elasticity. So I adjusted the spring compression system to 0, which is the lowest possible height. And then I tightened the screw all the way down such that it's at the same height as the spring compression system. So meaning the blue plastic ring and the metal flat head of the screw are at the same level, and this is how the cube performs. So this is like, it's actually still a manageable speed and tension. It doesn't feel so tight that it can barely turn, but the corner cutting is very limited because this is the minimum possible elasticity of the cube. Now I'm going to up the elasticity to the maximum level. So simply just put this blue thing here and just twist it. Now that I've pushed the bottom up, I'm also going to push the top up to be the same height so that the spring compression is the same. So I'm just going to loosen all the screws until it's the same height as the elasticity system. Now I've adjusted the cube to its maximum elasticity. Note that I tried to keep the spring force as constant as I can, so I also tensioned all the screws to the same height as the compression system. So the spring is still compressed to the same length, but the location of the spring is now much higher above the core than what it previously was. And this is how much the cube can corner cut. So there's really quite a big difference compared to the minimum elasticity. This is what the cube looks like at spring compression level 4. And the screw is also adjusted to be the same height as the spring compression system. And this is the condition that I used throughout my entire review. And these are a few less well-known features of the GTS3M. Firstly, the edges have 2 layers of torpedoes and the interlock with the corner multiple times. Then the GTS3 has a white core that is smaller in size than the traditional blue core. The GTS3 has primary internals, makes the cube look very neat in comparison to just having the internal pieces to be of random colors. So you can see the corner stock here is red, and then here it's yellow. It makes the cube look a bit inconsistent, and it's also unnecessary because all these pieces are not going to show up on the surface at all. So there's really no need to color them, and that's what the GTS3 does. It just doesn't color the pieces that don't show up on the surface. The GTS3 also has a lot of anti-stick design. These were present in the GTS1, but mostly on the corners, and also present in the GTS2, which are on the edges. But in the GTS3, you can actually see them everywhere. The anchors of the GTS3 are also much bigger than the MF3 RS2. So you can see right here, the base is a lot bigger, and you can see how much tighter the pieces lock together on the GTS3, whereas in the RS2 you can see a bit of empty space. In conclusion, the GTS3 is a crazy cube with new innovations poured in. MoYu is really trying to create a new and different cube rather than take features from already existing cubes, meshing them together and then calling it something new. And in my opinion, that's what the MF3 RS2 is. It's really like a WeiLong GTS 1.5, GTS 1 and 2 being put together in the RS2. And that's why MoYu can sell it as a budget cube. There's really not much like new work being put in it. It looks mostly like recycled work. However, it's a good cube because it recycles work from proven and reliable mechanisms, and it's the only budget cube where I feel like it's capable of destroying other brands' flagship, or at least competing on equal grounds with those flagship cubes. The GTS3 on the other hand is something new. There's really a lot of new features that this cube has to offer, in particular the spring compression system, which adds a whole dimension of customizability. The GTS3 will not take over the RS2 as my main, however, because the magnets are the biggest reason why I don't really like the GTS2 as much. And I purposely put weak magnets in my RS2 because that's my own turning style. But if you enjoy stronger magnets, the GTS3 will be an excellent cube to get. What I really want to get from the GTS3 in the future will be a 4x4. If you can customize the elasticity, that would be very nice. The WeiLong GTS3 has quite a lot in common with my 4x4 main, the AoSu GTS. And it will be really cool to have a 4x4 where you can max out the corner cutting and make it super stable and customize it like much more ways than what is available. And as a matter of fact, the AoSu GTS2 is coming, but there's no proof about how customizable this cube is. And the images shown here are not related to the AoSu GTS2. It is just a cube that I built in SolidWorks, but it took an entire afternoon to really produce these two pictures, so maybe just appreciate it.